The dust kicked up around Eleanor Nash's worn boots as her brother shoved her toward the wagon, his face twisted with disgust that she had seen too many times before. "You're nothing but dead weight, always have been," Thomas spat, loud enough for half of Tropic, Utah to hear. It was 1883, and the small settlement nestled in the shadow of Red Rock Canyons held little mercy for a 20-year-old woman with no prospects and a family that considered her worthless. Eleanor stumbled but caught herself, keeping her eyes down as shame burned hot across her cheeks. Her mother had died 3 years ago, and since then, Thomas and his new wife had made it clear that Eleanor was an unwanted burden on their household. She cooked, cleaned, mended, and tended the animals from dawn until well past dark, but it was never enough. Nothing she did would ever be enough. "Thomas, please," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "I can do more. I'll work harder." "Work harder?" His laugh was cruel. "You eat more than you're worth. Pack your things. You've got 2 days to find somewhere else to go, or I'm putting you on the train east with nothing but the clothes on your back." Eleanor felt her world tilt. She had nowhere to go, no money, no skills beyond housework that any woman could do. In a territory where women were scarce, but competition for respectable positions was fierce. What chance did she have? The whispers had already started around town about the Nash girl being turned out, and she could feel eyes on her back as she walked quickly toward the small house at the edge of town that had been her prison for so long. She spent that first night sitting on her narrow bed, staring at the cracked walls and trying to form a plan from the fragments of her shattered life. By morning, she had decided to visit every business in Tropic, asking for any kind of work. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all she had left. The general store turned her away. The hotel had no positions. The schoolhouse already had a teacher. By noon, Eleanor's feet ached and her hope had withered to almost nothing. She was standing outside the livery stable, gathering courage to ask there too, when she heard a commotion down the street. A horse had broken loose from its tether, and the beautiful chestnut mare was rearing and bucking, frightened by something Eleanor couldn't see. Men were shouting, trying to corner the animal, but their aggressive approach only made things worse. Without thinking, Eleanor stepped into the street and began humming softly, a melody her mother had taught her years ago. The mare's ears swiveled toward her. Eleanor kept humming, her voice low and soothing, taking slow steps forward with her hand outstretched. The men had gone quiet, watching this strange scene unfold. The horse's wild eyes began to calm, and after what felt like an eternity, the mare took a tentative step toward Eleanor. "That's it, sweet girl," Eleanor murmured. "Nobody's going to hurt you. You're safe now." The mare's nose brushed against Eleanor's palm, and she carefully reached up to grasp the dangling reins. The horse allowed it, some of the tension leaving her powerful body. Eleanor stroked her neck, continuing to hum and speak softly, until the mare was calm enough to lead. "I'll be damned." The voice came from behind her, deep and tinged with something like wonder. Eleanor turned to find a tall man in dusty traveling clothes watching her with intense blue eyes. He couldn't have been much older than 25, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that needed cutting. "That's my horse, and I've never seen her take to anyone like that so quick." "She was frightened," Eleanor said simply, handing him the reins. "Just needed someone to show her there was nothing to fear." The man studied her face with a directness that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze. There was something different in his eyes compared to the way most men looked at her, not judgment or dismissal, but genuine interest. "Name's August Ellis," he said, extending his free hand. "I'm a rancher, just brought some cattle to sell. Been looking to hire help at my place up near the Paunsaugunt Plateau." Eleanor's heart jumped. "What kind of help?" Someone to manage the house, cook for the hands during busy seasons, help with accounts and supplies. It's isolated 15 miles from the nearest neighbor and the work's hard. But it pays $30 a month plus room and board. $30. Eleanor had never had more than a few coins to call her own in her entire life. "I can do all those things," she said quickly. "I'm a hard worker, I promise. I can cook and clean, and I'm good with figures, and I don't mind isolation." August's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "You got a name, Eleanor Nash." Something flickered in his expression. "Thomas Nash's sister," her stomach sank. "Yes, but I swear I'm not. Heard he's turning you out." August's tone was neutral, but his eyes had gone hard. "Heard him at the saloon last night, talking about his burden of a sister like you were a lame horse he needed to shoot." Humiliation crashed over Eleanor in waves. She had known people were talking, but hearing it confirmed, knowing this stranger had heard Thomas's poison, made her want to disappear into the red dirt beneath her feet. "I'm sorry you heard that," she managed. "I understand if you've changed your mind about the position." "Changed my mind." August's eyebrows rose. "Miss Nash, any man who talks about his own blood like that isn't worth the air he breathes. Far as I'm concerned, his low opinion is a recommendation in your favor. You want the job, it's yours." Eleanor stared at him, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "Just like that. You don't want references or just saw you gentle a spooked horse with nothing but kindness and patience. That tells me more than any reference letter would." August's expression softened. "Look, I won't lie to you, the ranch is rough living. I've got 2 hands who work the cattle, but they bunk separately and I run a respectable operation. You'd have your own room in the main house, and I give you my word you'd be safe and treated fair. But it's lonely country, and the work doesn't stop. If you need time to think on it." "I don't need time," Eleanor interrupted. "When do we leave?" August studied her for a long moment, and Eleanor wondered what he saw: a desperate woman with no other options, probably, which was nothing but the truth. But when he spoke, his voice was kind. "Day after tomorrow, Dawn. That give you enough time to settle your affairs. More than enough." Eleanor had so few possessions that packing would take an hour at most. "All right then. Meet me at the livery at first light and we'll head up to the ranch." August tipped his hat to her. "Thank you for helping with Rosie here. She's got a gentle soul, but something must have startled her." Eleanor nodded and turned to go, then paused. "Mr. Ellis, thank you for the opportunity." "Thank you for taking it," he replied. "Something tells me you're exactly what the ranch has been needing." The next 2 days passed in a strange blur. Thomas seemed pleased to be rid of her and didn't ask where she was going. His wife gave her a dress that was worn nearly to threads and told her not to expect any help from them once she left. Eleanor packed her few belongings into a canvas bag and tried not to think too hard about what she was doing, leaving the only town she had ever known to live in isolation with a man who was essentially a stranger. But what choice did she have? And more than that, something in August Ellis's straightforward manner had put her at ease. He had looked at her and seen someone worth hiring, worth trusting. When was the last time anyone had looked at her like that? Dawn on the 3rd day found Eleanor at the livery stable, her bag at her feet and her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. August appeared right on time, leading Rosie and a sturdy bay gelding already hitched to a wagon loaded with supplies. "Morning," he greeted her with a nod. "You ready?" "Yes, sir." "Just August is fine." He helped her up onto the wagon seat, his hands respectful and brief on her arm. "It's about a 4-hour drive to the ranch. We'll stop halfway to rest the horses." The morning air was cool and crisp as they left Tropic behind, the wagon wheels creaking a steady rhythm. Eleanor watched the red rock formations rise around them, vast and ancient and beautiful. She had seen them all her life, but somehow they looked different now, like she was seeing them properly for the first time. "You ever been up to the plateau?" August asked after a while, breaking the comfortable silence. "No, sir. I mean, no, August. I've barely been outside of Tropic." He glanced at her with those keen blue eyes. "You'll like it, I think. It's good country, different from down here, more forest and meadow. The ranch sits in a valley with a year-round creek. My father started it 15 years ago, built it from nothing. Your father doesn't ranch anymore." August's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "He and my mother died 2 years back. Fever took them both within a week of each other. It's just been me and the hand since then." "I'm sorry," Eleanor said softly, and meant it. She knew what it was to lose parents, to be set adrift in a world that suddenly made less sense. "Thank you." August was quiet for a moment. "That's part of why I need help. I can manage the cattle and the land work fine, but the house has been falling to pieces, and I can't keep track of supplies worth a damn. Last winter, we nearly ran out of flour because I forgot to reorder. My mother used to handle all that, and I never paid enough attention to how she did it." Eleanor felt something ease in her chest. He needed her work, genuinely needed it, not as charity but as necessary help. "I can manage those things," she said with more confidence than she had felt in months. "My mother taught me to keep household accounts, and I know how to stock a pantry to last through hard times." "Good." August smiled at her, a real smile that reached his eyes and made him look younger. "I've got a feeling this is going to work out just fine, Miss Nash." "Eleanor," she said. "If I'm to call you August, you should call me Eleanor." "Eleanor," he repeated, and somehow the way he said her name made it sound like something valuable rather than a burden. They stopped at midday to water the horses at a small creek that cut through a grove of cottonwoods. August had packed food for the journey, bread and cheese and dried apples, and they ate sitting in the wagon's shade. Eleanor found herself relaxing in a way she couldn't remember doing around any man before. August didn't pry into her past or ask invasive questions. Instead, he told her about the ranch, about the 2 hands who worked for him. "Jack's been with us since my father's time," August explained. "He's getting on in years, but there's not a better cattleman in Utah. Then there's William, younger fellow, good worker. They're both decent men, respectful. But I'll tell you straight, if either of them ever makes you uncomfortable or says anything improper, you tell me immediately." "Understood," Eleanor nodded, touched by his protectiveness. "Understood. I mean it. You're part of my household now, under my protection. That means something." The rest of the journey passed with more conversation. August asked about her interests, and Eleanor found herself talking about books she loved reading, though she'd had access to very few books in her life. August promised his mother's small library was hers to use. She asked about the work of running a ranch, and he described it with an enthusiasm that made clear how much he loved this life. When they finally crested a ridge, and August pointed down into a green valley with a neat house and barn surrounded by grazing cattle, Eleanor caught her breath. It was beautiful in a simple, honest way, a place carved out of wilderness through hard work and determination. "Welcome to the Ellis Ranch," August said. "Welcome home, Eleanor." Home. The word caught in her throat. She hadn't had a real home since her mother died. Could this place possibly become that? The house was larger than she had expected, a solid 2-story structure built from timber and stone. August helped her down from the wagon and carried her bag to the door. "Let me show you around," he offered, pushing open the door to reveal a main room with a stone fireplace, a worn but comfortable-looking couch, and a large table. Everything was dusty and cluttered with papers and odds and ends, the marks of a household without a woman's organization. August rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. I know it's a mess. I've been focusing on the outdoor work and letting things slide in here. It's fine, Eleanor assured him, already mentally cataloging what needed to be done. Nothing that some cleaning won't fix. He showed her the kitchen, which was better equipped than she had expected, and then led her upstairs to a sunny bedroom with a real bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the valley. "This was my mother's sewing room," August said, "but I moved the furniture out and brought in the bed." "I hope it suits." Eleanor set her bag down, overwhelmed by the simple fact of having a space that was hers alone. "It's perfect, thank you. You're welcome." August lingered in the doorway. "Take the rest of the day to settle in. I'll fix something for supper, and before you argue, you're not on the clock until tomorrow. Let yourself rest." That evening, August made a simple meal of beans and bacon that they ate at the big table. He told her more about the ranch's routine, explaining that Jack and William would be back the next day from moving some cattle to summer pasture. "They're good men," he repeated. "But if ranch life isn't what you're used to, their manners might be a bit rough." "I'm not made of glass," Eleanor said quietly, "and I'm grateful to be here, truly." August met her eyes across the table. "Your brother's a fool, Eleanor. I hope you know that. Whatever he told you about being a burden, about not being worth the trouble, it's all lies." Eleanor's throat tightened. "You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you calmed a frightened horse with patience when every man in town was making it worse. I know you took a job in an isolated place with a stranger because you were brave enough to take a chance. I know you've been working yourself to the bone for people who didn't appreciate it." August's voice was firm, certain. "That tells me plenty." She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat, so she just nodded. August seemed to understand, letting the subject drop and turning the conversation to lighter topics. That night, lying in her new bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch settling around her, Eleanor allowed herself a small spark of hope. Maybe here, in this remote valley with this unexpected employer, she could build something new. Maybe she could prove to herself that she was more than the burden her brother claimed. The next morning, Eleanor woke at dawn out of long habit and immediately set to work. August found her in the kitchen, flour dusting her hands as she kneaded dough for fresh bread. "You didn't have to start so early," he protested. "I'm used to it," Eleanor replied. "Besides, I wanted to make a proper breakfast. When did you say Jack and William would arrive?" "Probably around noon." "Good. That gives me time to clean the main room and start organizing those papers of yours." August looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Eleanor's expression must have stopped him. This was her job, her purpose here, and she needed to prove her worth. He seemed to understand that. "All right," he conceded. "But you take breaks when you need them, understood? I'm heading out to check the south fence line. I'll be back for lunch." Eleanor spent the morning in a flurry of productive activity. She swept and scrubbed the main room until it gleamed, organized August's scattered papers into neat stacks, and inventoried the pantry to see what supplies were running low. The bread came out of the oven golden and perfect, and she had a pot of stew simmering by the time she heard horses approaching. Through the window, she saw August riding in with two other men. One was gray-haired and weathered, sitting his horse with the ease of long practice that would be Jack. The other was younger, maybe 30, with a friendly face and an easy smile, William. Eleanor smoothed her apron and stepped out onto the porch as the men dismounted. "Jack, William, this is Eleanor Nash," August made the introductions. "She'll be managing the house and helping with the accounts." "Eleanor, these are my top hands." Jack swept off his hat and nodded respectfully. "Madam, pleasure to meet you." William's greeting was equally polite. "Real glad to have you here, Miss Nash. Place has been needing a woman's touch." Eleanor relaxed slightly. August had been right, their manners were rough around the edges, but both men seemed decent. "It's good to meet you both. I've made lunch if you're hungry." The expressions on all three men's faces when they saw the spread she had laid out, fresh bread, stew, and dried apple pie, would have been comical if Eleanor hadn't been so nervous about their approval. "Miss Nash," Jack said reverently after his first bite, "if this is what we have to look forward to, you're going to be the most valued person on this ranch." August made a sound of agreement around a mouthful of bread. "Told you she was exactly what we needed." Over lunch, Eleanor learned more about the rhythm of ranch life. Summer was the busy season, with cattle to move to high pastures, fences to mend, and hay to cut. Come fall, they would drive a portion of the herd to market. Winter was quieter but harsh, with daily work to keep the animals fed and healthy. "How many head do you run?" Eleanor asked. "About 500 right now," August replied. "We're building the herd back up after a rough couple of winters. Lost quite a few to that first winter after my folks passed." Eleanor could hear the pain in his voice and understood. That first year after her mother died had been the hardest of her life, too. The days fell into a pattern. Eleanor rose at dawn, made breakfast for the men, then spent her days cleaning, mending, cooking, and organizing. But unlike at Thomas's house, here her work was noticed and appreciated. August thanked her every evening for the meals she prepared. Jack praised her washing skills when she got his shirts cleaner than they had been in years. William told her she made the best biscuits he had ever tasted. More than that, August involved her in the running of the ranch in ways she had never expected. He showed her the account books and asked her opinion on expenses. When she suggested buying in bulk from suppliers to save money, he implemented the idea immediately. When she pointed out that they could preserve more food for winter if they had better storage, he built her an improved root cellar. "You've got a head for this," he told her one evening as they went over the accounts together at the big table. "My mother used to say ranching was as much about smart planning as hard work. You understand that?" Eleanor felt pride warm her chest. "I like seeing how it all fits together." "Every piece matters. It does." August looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You matter, Eleanor. I hope you're starting to see that." She was. Slowly, carefully, like a plant pushing toward sunlight after too long in shadow, Eleanor was beginning to believe that she had value beyond being someone's unwanted obligation. 6 weeks into her time at the ranch, a storm rolled in from the west. Eleanor had been watching the sky darken all afternoon while August and the hands worked to get the cattle secured. By the time they returned to the house, the first fat drops of rain were falling. "Going to be a big one," Jack predicted, eyeing the clouds. "I'm heading to the bunkhouse." "You two stay dry." Eleanor had supper-ready stew and fresh cornbread, and she and August ate while rain drummed against the windows and thunder rolled across the valley. "You're not frightened of storms, are you?" August asked, noticing her glance toward the window. "No," Eleanor said truthfully. "I've always liked them, actually. The power of them, the way they make everything feel clean afterward. My mother felt the same way." August's voice went soft with memory. "She used to stand on the porch during storms, watching the lightning. Drove my father crazy with worry." "Tell me about them," Eleanor asked impulsively. "Your parents, if you want to, I mean." August was quiet for a moment, then began to speak. He told her about his father's determination to carve a ranch from wilderness, his mother's grace and strength. He spoke of growing up in this valley, learning to ride and rope and read the weather. His voice held love and loss in equal measure. "They would have liked you," he said finally. "My mother especially. She always said the measure of a person was in how they treated others when they had nothing to gain from kindness. You're kind straight through, Eleanor. It's one of the first things I noticed about you." Eleanor felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not special. I just try to treat others the way I wish to be treated." "That's exactly what makes you special." August's eyes were intense in the lamplight. "Do you know how rare that is? Real kindness, not the kind people put on for show, but the genuine article." Thunder crashed overhead, closer now, and Eleanor jumped slightly despite her claimed fearlessness. August reached across the table, his hand covering hers in a gesture that seemed instinctive. His palm was warm and calloused from work, and Eleanor was suddenly acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how the storm had created a strange intimacy in the lamp-lit kitchen. "I should clean up," she said, though she didn't move her hand. "Eleanor." August's voice was low. "Can I tell you something?" Her heart was beating too fast. "Yes. When I first came to Tropic to sell those cattle, I wasn't planning to hire anyone. I figured I'd muddle through on my own like I'd been doing." His thumb moved against her wrist, probably unconsciously. "Then I heard your brother in the saloon saying those terrible things about you, and I got angry. I wanted to hit him, which isn't like me. But the way he talked about his own sister, like you were nothing, it made me furious." "August, you don't have to. Let me finish, please." He took a breath. "The next day, when I saw you with Rosie, saw how gentle you were, how brave to step in when everyone else was just shouting, I knew you were someone special. And I used the excuse of needing help to bring you here, but the truth is, I wanted you here. Not just for the work, but because something in me recognized something in you." Eleanor's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you're not an employee to me anymore, Eleanor. You haven't been for weeks." August's eyes searched her face. "I'm saying that you're the best part of my day. That I look forward to these evenings when it's just us talking. That the way you've brought life back to this house, to this ranch, to me it's more than I could have hoped for." "I'm just doing my job," Eleanor whispered, even as her heart soared. "No." August stood, coming around the table to kneel beside her chair. "You're being yourself, and that's more valuable than all the work in the world. Eleanor, you're not a burden, you never were. You're a gift. My greatest gift." Tears sprang to Eleanor's eyes. To hear those words, after years of being told she was worthless, was almost too much to bear. "I don't know what to say," she managed. "Say you'll give me a chance," August replied. "Say you'll let me court you properly. I know I'm not much, just a rancher trying to build something in difficult country. But I swear I'll spend every day proving to you that you're valued and cherished and, yes." Eleanor interrupted him, laughing through her tears. "Yes, August, I'll let you court me. I want that. She paused, gathering courage. "I care for you too, more than I should probably admit, but I do." August's face broke into the widest smile Eleanor had ever seen on him. He stood, drawing her up with him, and then his arms were around her and she was pressed against his chest, feeling his heart pound as fast as her own. "Thank you," he murmured into her hair. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, on this place." "Thank you for seeing me," Eleanor replied. "For looking past what everyone else said and seeing who I actually am." They stood like that while the storm raged outside, holding each other in the quiet kitchen, and Eleanor felt something shift and settle in her soul. This was home. This man, this ranch, this life they were building together, this was where she belonged. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Eleanor had imagined. August was attentive and respectful, always mindful of propriety even as their feelings deepened. He brought her wildflowers from the high meadows. She packed him special lunches when he had to ride far from the house. They spent evenings on the porch, talking about everything and nothing while the sun set over the valley. Jack and William noticed the change, of course, but both men seemed pleased. "About time the boss found himself a good woman," Jack told Eleanor one day with a wink. Place has been too lonely since his folks passed. Eleanor threw herself into learning everything she could about ranching. August taught her to ride properly, giving her a gentle mare named Daisy. She learned to read the signs of weather, to identify which plants were good forage and which were poisonous to cattle. August valued her mind as much as her domestic skills, asking her opinion on everything from breeding decisions to when to sell. "You're a natural at this," he told her one afternoon as they rode together to check on a remote pasture. "You think like a rancher." "I had a good teacher," Eleanor replied, smiling at him. August reached over and took her hand as their horses walked side by side. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his tone made her look at him sharply. "What is it?" "I'm in love with you." The words were simple, direct, utterly August. "I've been in love with you for weeks now, maybe since the beginning, and I know it's soon and I don't want to rush you, but I needed you to know. You're everything to me." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, happy tears this time. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you the moment you called me exactly what you needed instead of a burden. You've given me back myself, August. How could I not love you?" He leaned from his saddle to kiss her, gentle and sweet, and Eleanor felt happiness bubble up inside her like a spring. This was real. This love, this life, this man, all of it was real and hers. That evening, August spoke to Jack and William, asking them to stand as witnesses. Then he turned to Eleanor with formal courtesy and asked, "Eleanor Nash, would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife?" Eleanor had known the question was coming, had seen it in August's eyes all through supper, but hearing it out loud still made her heart race. "Yes," she said clearly. "Yes, August, I'll marry you." Jack let out a whoop and William clapped August on the back. August pulled Eleanor into his arms and kissed her properly this time, with passion and promise, while the two hands respectfully turned away. "We'll go to Tropic next week," August said when they finally broke apart. "Get the license, have the preacher marry us, unless you want something fancier." "We could go to a bigger town. Tropic is fine," Eleanor assured him. "I don't need fancy, I just need you." The week passed in a blur of preparation. Eleanor sewed herself a new dress from fabric August bought on a supply run, pale blue cotton that brought out her eyes. She made a special cake and helped August clean up his Sunday suit. She felt none of the nervousness traditional brides supposedly experienced. How could she be nervous when she was marrying her best friend, the man who had shown her what real love looked like? The night before they were to leave for town, Eleanor stood on the porch watching the stars emerge. August came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Having second thoughts?" he asked softly, not even slightly. Eleanor leaned back against his chest. "Are you?" "Only thought I'm having is how lucky I am." August turned her to face him. "Eleanor, I want you to know after we're married, this ranch is as much yours as mine. Not just in name, but in truth. Your ideas, your work, your heart, you've put them all into this place. It belongs to you." "It belongs to us," Eleanor corrected. "We're partners, August. Equals." "Equals," he agreed. "In everything, I promise you that." They arrived in Tropic at midday, and Eleanor felt strange riding back into the town that had been her prison. But everything looked different now. Smaller somehow, less important. August handled the legal paperwork while Eleanor waited, and she noticed people staring. Let them stare. Let them see that the burden had found someone who valued her. The preacher married them in the small church at the edge of town, with Jack and William standing witness and a few curious townspeople filling the pews. Eleanor said her vows clearly, meaning every word, and August's voice was steady and sure as he promised to love and cherish her all his days. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, August kissed her with such tenderness that Eleanor felt tears slip down her cheeks. They were married. She was Eleanor Ellis now, wife to the man she loved, partner in a ranch and a life. As they left the church, Eleanor saw Thomas standing across the street. Her brother's face was twisted with some emotion she couldn't read, anger maybe, or regret. August followed her gaze and tensed. "Want me to say something to him?" he asked quietly. Eleanor considered, then shook her head. "No, he doesn't matter anymore. None of it matters except us." August smiled and helped her into the wagon. As they drove out of Tropic, heading home to the ranch, Eleanor didn't look back. That chapter of her life was closed. Everything ahead of her was bright with possibility. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, but a joyful one. Eleanor moved her things into August's bedroom, shy at first but growing more comfortable as the days passed. August was a patient and loving husband, always mindful of her comfort and happiness. They fell into an easy rhythm of work and companionship, each supporting the other. Eleanor discovered she was pregnant in late autumn, and August's joy was so profound it brought tears to both their eyes. "We're having a baby," he kept saying, wonder in his voice. "You're giving me a family, Eleanor." "We're making a family," she corrected, placing his hand on her still flat belly. "Together." August became even more protective during her pregnancy, trying to stop her from doing heavy work until Eleanor firmly reminded him that she was pregnant, not made of porcelain. They compromised, with Eleanor taking on lighter tasks while still managing the household. In the spring of 1884, Eleanor gave birth to a healthy baby boy. August cried when he held his son for the first time, and they named him Robert after August's father. "He's perfect," August whispered, looking down at the tiny face. "You're perfect. How did I get so blessed?" "We're both blessed," Eleanor said, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. Jack and William doted on baby Robert, taking turns carving him toys and generally behaving like proud uncles. The house rang with laughter and life in a way it hadn't since August's parents died. As Robert grew from infant to toddler, Eleanor found herself settling more deeply into her role not just as wife and mother, but as co-owner of the ranch. August had been true to his word about partnership, consulting her on all major decisions. When she suggested diversifying into sheep as well as cattle, he listened, and they bought a small flock. When she proposed hosting a summer gathering for neighboring ranchers to trade stock and information, August thought it was brilliant, and they made it an annual event. The ranch prospered under their joint management. August's skill with cattle and land combined with Eleanor's business sense, and planning created something stronger than either could have built alone. By their third anniversary, they had paid off the last of the debts August's father had left and were operating fully in the black. On a warm summer evening in 1886, Eleanor sat on the porch with 2-year-old Robert playing at her feet and her hand resting on her swelling belly. Their second child was due in the fall. August came riding in from the north pasture, and his whole face lit up when he saw them. "They are my favorite people," he said, swinging down from his horse and scooping Robert up into a hug before kissing Eleanor thoroughly. "How are you feeling?" "Good." "Tired but good." Eleanor smiled at him. "How was the fence work?" "All done. Jack thinks we should move the yearlings to the high meadow next week." August sat beside her, keeping Robert on his lap. "What do you think?" They discussed ranch business while Robert played with his father's hat, and Eleanor felt contentment settle over her like a warm blanket. This life, these people, this love, it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. "August," she said suddenly, "do you remember what you said to me that first night, about me being your greatest gift?" "Of course I remember." August's eyes were soft. "It was true then, and it's true now." "You're my greatest gift too," Eleanor told him. "You and this life we've built. Sometimes I think about where I was 3 years ago, and I can barely recognize that frightened girl. You helped me become who I was always meant to be." "No." August shifted Robert to one arm so he could take Eleanor's hand with the other. "You were always this person. I just had the good sense to see it. You saved yourself, Eleanor. You were brave enough to take that chance to trust me to build something new. I'm just grateful I got to be part of your story." "Our story," Eleanor corrected, squeezing his hand. "It's our story now." That fall, Eleanor gave birth to a daughter they named Margaret, after Eleanor's mother. The little girl had her mother's dark hair and her father's blue eyes, and August declared her the most beautiful baby ever born. Life on the ranch continued its rhythms through the changing seasons. Robert grew into an energetic boy who followed his father everywhere, already showing signs of becoming a natural rancher. Margaret was a happy, curious child who adored her older brother. Eleanor managed the household and accounts while August and the hands worked the land and cattle. Jack retired in 1889, staying on in a small cabin August built for him near the main house. "Can't leave the ranch," the old cowhand said gruffly. "It's home, and you folks are family." William married a widow from a neighboring ranch, and August hired 2 new young hands to help with the expanding operation. Eleanor started a small school in what had been the sewing room, teaching not just her own children, but also the children from nearby ranches. She loved sharing her passion for learning, and August was proud of the way she enriched their community. On their 10th anniversary in 1893, August surprised Eleanor by taking her on a trip to Salt Lake City. It was the farthest she had ever traveled, and seeing the big city was thrilling. But what touched her most was when August took her to a jeweler and bought her a proper wedding ring to replace the simple band she had worn for years. "You deserve beautiful things," he told her as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "You deserve everything good in this world." "I already have everything I need," Eleanor replied, but she treasured the ring as a symbol of how far they had come together. By 1895, the Ellis Ranch was one of the most successful operations in southern Utah. August and Eleanor had built something remarkable through hard work and partnership. Robert was 11 and already working cattle with his father. Margaret was 7 and showing signs of inheriting her mother's head for figures, and Eleanor was pregnant again, much to everyone's surprise and delight. "We're getting too old for this," she teased August when she told him. "Speak for yourself," August replied, though his hands were gentle as they rested on her belly. "I'm in my prime. Their 3rd child, a son they named Thomas, because I can reclaim that name," Eleanor said firmly, "and make it mean something good, was born healthy and strong in early 1896. Life continued to be good to the Ellis family. The ranch prospered, the children grew, and the love between Eleanor and August only deepened with time. They had their challenges: harsh winters, difficult cattle drives, the inevitable struggles of raising children, but they faced everything together, as partners, as best friends, as lovers. One evening in 1898, when Robert was 14, Margaret was 10, and young Thomas was 2, the whole family gathered on the porch as they often did. The children were playing a game while August and Eleanor sat close together, watching the sunset paint the valley in shades of gold and rose. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" August asked quietly. Eleanor knew what he meant. "Sometimes. If you hadn't come to Tropic that day, if I hadn't stepped into the street when Rosie bolted, if you hadn't offered me this job, if you hadn't been brave enough to take it." August pulled her closer. "So many small moments that had to line up perfectly." "Maybe it was meant to be," Eleanor suggested. "Maybe we were always supposed to find each other. I like that idea." August kissed her temple. 15 years, Eleanor. 15 years since I first saw you calm a frightened horse and knew you were special. Best 15 years of my life. Mine, too." Eleanor watched their children, so loved and secure in a way she had never been as a child. We built something good here, didn't we? We built something extraordinary. August's voice was full of pride and love. A home, a family, a legacy, and we did it together. Robert looked over at his parents and wrinkled his nose. Are you two being mushy again? Yes, August replied without shame. Get used to it. Margaret giggled, and even little Thomas laughed, though he was too young to understand. Eleanor felt her heart swell with love for all of them, this impossible, wonderful family that had grown from the ashes of her old life. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Eleanor and August stood together in their bedroom. August brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch as gentle as it had been that first stormy night when he had told her she was his greatest gift. I love you, he said simply. More now than I did even yesterday, and I'll love you more tomorrow than I do today. I love you too, Eleanor replied. Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for giving me a home, a family, a life worth living. Thank you for taking a chance on a lonely rancher. August kissed her softly. Thank you for being exactly who you are. They held each other in the quiet of the night, two people who had found each other against the odds and built something beautiful together. Eleanor thought about that frightened young woman who had stood in the dust of Tropic being called a burden, and she barely recognized her. That girl had been lost, but she had also been brave enough to take a hand when it was offered, strong enough to build a new life from nothing. And now here she was, Eleanor Ellis, wife, mother, rancher, beloved, living proof that the labels others put on you don't define you. You define yourself through your choices, your courage, and your capacity to love and be loved. The years continued to roll by, each one adding new layers to the family story. Robert grew into a fine young man who shared his father's love of ranching and his mother's good sense. He took over more of the daily operations, allowing August to slow down a bit as he entered his 50s. Margaret proved to have a gift for teaching and began helping her mother with the ranch school. Thomas was growing into a bright, energetic boy who kept everyone on their toes. In 1903, when Eleanor was 40 and August was 45, they sat together at the big table that had been the site of so many family meals and important discussions. The house was quiet. Robert was out checking the cattle, Margaret had taken Thomas fishing, and for a rare moment, August and Eleanor were alone. 20 years, August said, reaching across the table to take Eleanor's hand. We've been married 20 years tomorrow. Eleanor smiled at him, loving the silver that now threaded through his dark hair, the lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. He was more handsome to her now than he had been as a young man, each mark of time a testament to the life they had lived together. 20 years, she repeated. It feels both longer and shorter than that somehow. I know what you mean. August ran his thumb across her knuckles. Eleanor, I want to tell you something. I've been thinking about it a lot lately. What is it? When I found you in Tropic, when I heard your brother talking about you like you were worthless, something in me knew I had to do something. I told myself I was just offering you a job, but deep down, I think I was already falling for you even then. August's voice was thick with emotion. You were so brave, stepping in to help Rosie when everyone else was just making things worse. And when you looked at me with those eyes that had seen too much pain but still held hope, I was done for. Eleanor felt tears prickle her eyes. August, let me finish. He squeezed her hand. These 20 years with you have been the greatest privilege of my life. Watching you bloom from that scared young woman into the incredible person you are now, raising our children together, building this ranch into something we're both proud of, it's more than I ever dreamed possible. You're not just my wife, Eleanor. You're my partner, my best friend, my greatest love. You're still my greatest gift. And you're mine, Eleanor said through her tears. "You saw me when no one else would. You valued me when everyone else threw me away. You gave me a place to belong, a purpose, a family. But more than that, you loved me, the real me with all my flaws and fears. You made me believe I was worth loving." August stood and came around the table, pulling Eleanor to her feet and into his arms. "You've always been worth loving. Always. And I'll spend whatever time we have left making sure you know that every single day." They held each other in the quiet kitchen, two people who had weathered everything life threw at them and come through stronger. Outside, the ranch that was their joint creation sprawled across the valley, a testament to what two people could build when they worked together in love and respect. Robert came back later that afternoon with news that one of the cows had given birth to twin calves, a rare and lucky occurrence. Margaret returned with Thomas, both of them muddy and happy from their fishing expedition. The family gathered for supper around the big table, talking and laughing, and Eleanor looked at each beloved face and felt profound gratitude. That night, lying in bed with August's arms around her, Eleanor thought about the journey that had brought her here. From unwanted burden to cherished wife and mother. From believing herself worthless to knowing her own value. From having nothing to having everything that truly mattered. "What are you thinking about?" August murmured sleepily. "Just how lucky I am," Eleanor replied. "How blessed we are." "We are blessed," August agreed. "And it all started with you being brave enough to take a chance." "It started with you being kind enough to offer me one," Eleanor corrected. August chuckled. "Let's call it a joint effort, like everything else we've done." "A joint effort," Eleanor agreed. "I like that." The years continued their steady march. Robert fell in love with the daughter of a neighboring rancher and married her in a beautiful ceremony at the ranch in 1905. Margaret decided to become a teacher and went away to training college in Salt Lake City, though she returned often. Thomas grew tall and strong, showing every sign of becoming as fine a man as his father. August and Eleanor grew older together gracefully, still partners in every sense of the word. They sat together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over the valley they had made their own. They worked side by side, though their roles had shifted as age took its toll. Eleanor managing the accounts and household, while August advised Robert on the heavier ranch work. In 1908, Robert and his wife presented them with their first grandchild, a little girl named Eleanor after her grandmother. August cried when he held the baby, and Eleanor felt her heart might burst with joy. "We did it," August said, looking at Eleanor over the baby's head. "We built a family, a legacy, something that will outlast us." "We did," Eleanor agreed. "Together." Margaret married a kind schoolteacher in 1910 and settled in a nearby town, close enough to visit regularly. Thomas, now 14, was already talking about his plans for expanding the ranch's sheep operation. The family that August and Eleanor had created was growing and flourishing, branches spreading from the strong trunk they had built together. On a crisp autumn evening in 1912, August and Eleanor celebrated their 30th anniversary. Their children and grandchildren gathered at the ranch for a party. There was music and dancing and so much laughter that the old house seemed to ring with joy. As the party wound down and the guests began to leave, August pulled Eleanor aside to the porch where they had spent so many evenings. 30 years, he said, shaking his head in wonder. "How did we get so lucky?" "Hard work, good choices, and a whole lot of love," Eleanor replied, leaning against him. She was 50 now, her hair more gray than dark, her face lined with the marks of a life well lived. But when August looked at her, she saw in his eyes the same love he had shown her that very first day. "I need to tell you something," August said seriously, "in case I don't get another chance." "August, don't talk like that. Listen, please." He took both her hands. You saved my life, Eleanor. Not in some dramatic way, but in all the small, important ways that really matter. After my parents died, I was just going through the motions, existing but not really living. Then you came along and brought light back into this house, into my heart. You gave me purpose beyond just keeping the ranch running. You gave me love and family and joy. You took what was just a property and made it a home. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. You did the same for me. You took a broken woman who believed she was worthless and showed her she had value. You gave me a reason to be proud of myself. Every good thing in my life came from you taking a chance on me. We took a chance on each other, August said, and it was the best decision either of us ever made. They stood together in the moonlight, holding each other the way they had through 30 years of joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. The ranch spread out around them, proof of what they had built together. Inside the house, they could hear their children and grandchildren laughing. It was everything Eleanor had never dared to dream of when she was that scared young woman in Tropic. I love you, she told August. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, August replied. My greatest gift, my Eleanor. The years that followed were gentle to August and Eleanor. They watched their grandchildren grow, celebrated Thomas's marriage in 1915, and saw the ranch continue to prosper under Robert's capable management with Thomas's help. They grew older together, their bodies slowing but their love never dimming. In the spring of 1920, August fell ill with pneumonia. Eleanor nursed him devotedly, but even her fierce love couldn't hold back time. On a quiet morning with Eleanor holding his hand, August passed peacefully, surrounded by his family. Eleanor grieved deeply but without regret. They had been blessed with 38 years of marriage, longer than many couples got. She had his children, his grandchildren, his legacy. And she had the memories of a love that had transformed both their lives. She lived for several more years, staying active in the ranch's operations and enjoying her growing number of grandchildren. She told them all the story of how she met their grandfather, how he had called her his greatest gift when everyone else called her a burden. She wanted them to know that love could heal, that kindness mattered, that you could build something beautiful even from the ashes of heartbreak. When Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1925 at the age of 62, she was buried next to August on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Robert carved a simple inscription on her headstone. Eleanor Ellis, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she was our greatest gift. The ranch continued through the generations, always in the Ellis family, always carrying forward the legacy that August and Eleanor had started. Their great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren heard the story of how it all began with a frightened horse, a kind cowboy, and a woman brave enough to take a chance on a new life. And in the end, that was what mattered most. Not that Eleanor had been called a burden, but that August had seen the truth that she was, and always had been, a gift. That simple act of recognition, of seeing someone's true value when everyone else was blind to it, had created something that lasted far beyond either of their lifetimes. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Red Rock country of Utah in 1883, nurtured through years of hard work and partnership, and proven through the test of time. A reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts come in unexpected packages, and that real love has the power to transform not just two lives, but generations to come.